Have you ever felt like the road wanted to swallow you alive? And still, someone stood in front of your fate to save you? Stay until the end because today I'm going to tell you how, on a cursed pass in Mexico, I lost my brakes while fully loaded. And a woman stepped up in front of my truck to open the way to life. And hey, subscribe right now and hit the bell, because here we share real stories of delivery drivers that will make you grip the wheel with your knuckles. My name is Mateo Avila and I've been a delivery driver since I turned 20. I've hauled everything: boxes with airplane parts, medicines that can't wait, tomatoes that turn to water if they don't arrive on time. That morning I had a long route, Durango toward the coast, along a highway that the old road veterans call the Spine of the Winds. You won't find it on maps under that name, but anyone who's crossed the Sierra understands. A ridge of stone with knife-like curves and a wind that sneaks into the cab as if it had teeth. It was a clear day, a sky worn blue by the sun. I was pulling a refrigerated semi loaded with 26 tons of fresh produce for a wholesale market at the port. Cucumbers, avocados, cilantro, crates stacked like a wall. Tight schedule, controlled temperatures, minimal margin. The kind of trip that forces you to feel every gear shift with your whole body. Hanging from my mirror was the charm my son Nico gave me, a little wooden skull on a red string. "So you remember that life also breaks, Dad," he told me when I turned 49. Since then I've kept it at eye level, swaying with every bump, winking in its own way. I rolled out of the yard at 6:40, and at the scale the guard told me without looking, "If you cross the spine, don't get cocky." Yesterday there was a windstorm. I answered with that gesture of those who've been there before, the gesture that says, "I know, boss," even though inside you carry an altar of fears. I stopped at the last truck stop before the climb to check the lug nuts, tighten the straps on the inner tarp, smell the drums. Not paranoia, just routine. Oil fine, brake fluid at level, compressor with no strange noises. I did what I always do, entered the mountains in low gear, letting the engine act as anchor every so often. What goes down on the motor goes up in life, I repeated like a prayer. The spine of the winds never forgives the distracted. The first curves were a familiar dance. Look, calculate, downshift, let the weight push with respect. At my side, the reefer thermometer fixed to the client's requested temperature. Behind, the compressor purring with a rhythm that calmed me. The CB radio crackled with distant voices, dawn jokes, pothole alerts, a poorly tuned corrido bouncing between the hills. It was on the third hairpin that I heard something I didn't like. A dull sound, as if two pieces kissed with anger, back there where the trailer and gravity become partners. "Don't be a clown," I told myself, and tapped the pedal gently, just a test. Soft. Softer than normal. I pressed again and the pedal went all the way to the floor as if there were nothing. Nothing. When your foot finds emptiness, your body learns to pray without words. Your neck tightens, your mouth dries, your heart finds second and third gear on its own. I didn't want to panic. I let out air slowly, shifted down to second low, let the engine growl. Tried pumping the pedal. Once, twice, 3 times. The pedal came back, yes, but with that scary slack. And the speed, damn, the speed began to rise as if someone had opened an invisible door behind me. In the mirror, a shy smoke that wasn't from the exhaust. Then I smelled what no delivery driver wants to admit, burnt lining. An old rope of fear tightened my gut. Behind me, on the asphalt, I saw a fleeting spark vanish like a sick firefly. "Don't fall apart on me, my king," I muttered to the truck, pushing more engine to hold the weight. But the mountain doesn't listen to pleas. The CB radio spat static, and in the noise came a clear voice, northern accent, firm like an order and warm like a blanket. "Unit plate 42 DM 73, refrigerated trailer, you're coming fast on the spine. What's your status?" It took me a second to realize she meant me. I grabbed the PTT with one hand, the other locked on the wheel. "This is Mateo Avila, cold freight, 26 tons. Lost pressure in the system. Brakes not catching. Repeat, not catching." 2 seconds of silence, maybe 3. Then the voice returned, closer, with a certainty that cut through my anxiety. "Mateo, this is Lieutenant Mara Salgado, Highway Division. I'm ahead of you. I'll clear the way. There's an escape ramp in 1.5 kilometers. Can you hold on, engine?" I didn't think. I answered the only thing I could. If I follow you, I can. Then you follow me. Stay in your lane. No sudden moves. I'll clear the road. And I saw her. A dark patrol car, black and white, blue lights spinning in the cruel mountain sun. She stuck to my lane like a magnet. Accelerated until she was right in front of the beast I was hauling. If she had braked, I would have turned her into a stamp. But she didn't brake. She lit the siren and began shoving the world aside with shouts. Vehicles, clear out. Truck with no brakes descending. Repeat, truck with no brakes. I was already at 80 and climbing. The spine of the winds does that, lies to you with short straights and punishes you with dogtooth curves. The wind pushed into the windows as if trying to rip me out of the seat. The lieutenant didn't hesitate. I'm here, Mateo. Watch my lights. Don't lose me. I'll take you. The next curve, one of those that have a name among the people on the route, the Claw, they call it, opened before me like a tongue of asphalt hanging over the void. To the right, the mountainside dropped into a sea of pines. To the left, bare rock scratched by generations of tires. In the mirror, I noticed a tiny thread of fire on a rear drum. Not a big blaze, but enough to make me understand the urgency. I've got heat in the rear, I said over the radio. I see it, she answered without turning. Don't be scared of what we can still control. Focus on what you do have, engine, arms, and resolve. The ramp is ahead. I promise you. I clung to the wheel. I felt the texture of the cover as if my skin needed it to keep going. My arms burned, my legs trembled, but there was no room for panic. The CB filled with voices. Stay strong, brother. Roads closing. We're backing you from above. People I don't know, brothers of the road, those souls that appear when the mountains demand a toll. Lieutenant Mara, steady, use the loudspeaker. Motorbike, move aside. White sedan, pull over. Bus, stop it. Cars made way as best they could. Some filmed, because that's the world now. Others cried without even knowing why. I saw everything with the absurd clarity of someone who might die, a clarity that lets you read the date on a sticker on a windshield at 100 kilometers per hour. I felt like talking, maybe to keep from dissolving. Lieutenant, I have an 11-year-old boy. He gave me this charm. I can't fail him. You won't fail, she said. Not as comfort, as certainty. Hold on, Mateo. I promise I'll get you into that ramp. But you're the one driving. I open the way, you decide to enter. The air changed suddenly. A gust of side wind moved the trailer like a kite. The semi swerved. Not a full snake, just that treacherous sway that warns if you panic and overcorrect, you're gone. Breathe, she ordered over the radio. Shift down half, grip tight, don't fight. Let the tail dance without inviting it to the party. Half of me wanted to stomp something that no longer existed. The other half listened to her. I loosened just a bit of tension in my shoulders, and the trailer, like an angry horse when you slack the reins, settled with a dry jolt. That's it, Mateo. That's it. You're with me. A short straight appeared suddenly. The speed rose to 95. No clock measures that space between fear and obedience. The only thing that exists is vertigo. On that straight, the lieutenant's patrol hugged the center line even more. I felt what she was doing, widening my corridor, scaring off those who wanted to sneak in for a look, building a boundary so I only had to think about following her wake. I wanted to thank her, say something that didn't mock the moment, but I could only let out a grunt. She kept talking, as if holding my neck with her voice. Remember your boy, Mateo. Mine is 8. I know what you mean. We're both in this. And a strange current ran through my body, a mix of fear and gratitude, like when they give you an injection that hurts but saves you. The radio crackled again. Ramp at 700, another voice said. Repeat, ramp at 700 meters. 7 big blocks, I thought, and laughed in the least appropriate place. The world gifts you those laughs right before it throws a brick at you. The next curve was left-handed, one of those blind ones that force you to imagine the rest of the road. The patrol entered decisively and me right behind, 2 animals tied by an invisible thread. A sharp beep sounded inside the dashboard, a reefer alarm. Don't fail me too, I begged the unit, though I no longer cared if the lettuce arrived crisp. The only crispness that mattered at that moment was my bones. At the exit of that curve, the hillside opened enough for the sun to strike the cab head-on. For a second, I saw the silhouette of the patrol surrounded by dust, as if it were a shadow with blue eyes. The siren bit the air. A bus wavered up ahead. The lieutenant devoured it with shouts, "Don't cross!" And it didn't. The kids on the bus pressed their noses to the windows, and it hurt to imagine what they would have seen if not. 500, she said over the radio. 400. To the right, you'll see a blue sign. Don't think. Enter. I swallowed, but it was already sand. The sign appeared shabby, half-crooked, emergency ramp, 300 m. Behind it, a narrow lane of gravel and coarse sand, with rumble strips and the promise of a braking you don't find in manuals, only in miracles. "I'll move aside at the last second," the lieutenant said. "Follow my light. When you lose it, it's because it's yours." "Don't let go," I asked. "I won't let go," she replied. How far can someone who doesn't know you go to keep your story from ending today? Stay with me until the end, because I'm going to tell you what Lieutenant Salgado did when the whole world seemed to tighten. And subscribe right now so you don't miss the continuation of this and other real stories of delivery drivers that squeeze your soul. The ground vibrated as if beneath the mountain lived an animal tired of holding us. The trailer's tail hinted at a whip again. I controlled it with a long sigh. The patrol opened slightly, tracing a minimal diagonal, millimetric, and then I knew the moment had come. "Now," she said, and that word was a hammer blow. I turned gently into the ramp lane. The semi screamed, kissed the concrete edge with its outer tire, and the entrance received me like a rough embrace. And gravel. The noise changed language. The wheel grew heavy. The cab gave a hop, then another, as if climbing invisible stones. The world became brown particles floating in the light. I pushed in as far as I could, letting the beast bury its legs in that dry sea. The body went from violence to silence in a few seconds that will take me a lifetime to explain. The only thing I heard was my own breathing, a beast inside my chest unwilling to accept that danger had dropped its knife. The trailer settled with a final gasp. The dashboard flickered like a Christmas tree and went dark. It was over. The universe shrank to the size of my hands, glued to the wheel so tight I felt that if I let go, I'd fall apart. I released slowly, as if asking permission from each finger one by one. My forearms, which I thought were stone, trembled. Nico's charm swayed with a calm that felt like mockery. I cried. Not as a hero, not as a man, not as anything that fits a label. I cried because I was alive. The patrol car parked beside me with the elegance of a final act. The door opened and out stepped Lieutenant Mara Salgado. She wasn't an apparition. She was a woman in a simple uniform, hair tied back in a tired bun, boots bitten by dirt, eyes with that strange shine that is neither glamour nor tears, it's pure resolve. She approached without hurry, like someone careful not to startle a frightened horse. She looked through my window. I couldn't speak, so she spoke for both of us. "Good job, Matteo." I opened the door and stepped down in slow motion. My knees buckled. Whether out of reflex or need, I hugged her. Not that formal thank you hug, one that held up my weight and my disbelief. She returned the hug with a pat on the back, that gesture that stitches your soul back to your body. We stayed there, breathing the smell of sand and hot iron. Overhead, birds drew circles as if measuring our heartbeats. The mountains, in their way, gave us space to readjust. She was the first to break the silence. "Can you walk?" I nodded. "There's a post 5 minutes away. They'll serve you coffee, pot brewed, and water, plenty of water." I smiled because my body wanted the obvious and the impossible at the same time. "Coffee." "Of course," she said, "but first breathe. The world isn't going anywhere without you." We walked toward her patrol car. Along the way, the echo of the fading siren mixed with distant voices. A car stopped at a distance. Someone honked, not impatiently, but with respect. That temple-like language we know on the road. I sat in the passenger seat. She drove off without hurry. No music. Only the sound of the mountains when they choose to keep their secrets for a while. The post was a small white booth, with a weary flag, a radio pecking out static, and a wobbly table. A woman in an apron served pot coffee in glass cups. When the liquid touched my tongue, it tasted like medicine and childhood. "Why did you put yourself in front?" I asked. "You could have coordinated from a distance, closed lanes, set cones. Why that way?" She turned the cup in her hands, unhurried. "Because if I didn't step in, you'd think more than you should. And when you think too much on the spine grabs you by the throat. Sometimes you have to put your chest forward so the other only has to follow." We stayed silent for a stretch I can't measure. Outside, the light shifted a bit. Inside, the coffee became company. "Do you have children?" I asked, maybe because of what she'd told me on the descent. "A girl," she answered. 8. She likes bicycles and tamarind lollipops. I like her to read. I like to see her sleeping when I get home. I nodded, understanding too much. I took out the charm that had hung in my cab. She looked at it carefully, as if holding a bird. "It's nice," she said. "It's wood. My son carved it with his grandfather. He says it protects me because wood remembers the trees." Sometimes, when you share things like that, you fear sounding corny. But she didn't mind. She smiled. "Wood remembers the trees," she repeated, savoring it. She set her cup on the wobbly table and sighed, not tired, but like someone releasing a memory heavier than the air. "My father was of the road too," she said without looking at me. "Not from this area, but they brought him here. In 2001, he was descending with a load of bricks. He lost brakes in the same mountains. No one accompanied him, no one cleared the way. They found him cold at the needle curve. I was 12. That day I swore that if I could ever keep someone else from going the same way, I would. Even if it cost me everything." I felt my throat dry again, but not from fear. There was a mix of rage and tenderness in that confession. I wanted to tell her I understood, that my father had also taught me never to trust the pedal, but the words stuck. The only thing that came out was, "Thank you." She shook her head. "Don't thank me. You held the wheel. I was just there to remind you someone was waiting." The coffee woman approached with an old metal pot and poured us more. The foam danced on the surface, smelling of brown sugar and cinnamon. "Drink up, children," she said, as if she knew what we'd been through without needing to ask. I held the cup in my hands, and in that warmth I found a shared silence. Outside, engines began to rumble again. The road never rests. But inside, in that peeling-walled booth, it felt like a parenthesis. Minutes passed, maybe half an hour. Mara stood first. "I need to file a report. They'll bring you a tow. Your unit will sleep on the ramp for a while." I nodded. We walked out together. The sun was already dropping, painting the mountains with orange tones that looked like gentle fire. We walked to the patrol car. Before getting in, she searched her pocket and handed me a crumpled piece of paper, a gas station receipt with her number written on the back. "In case you ever need someone to remind you to breathe." I kept it without thinking, knowing that in that scrap of paper there was more life than in many promises. I climbed into a trailer a fellow driver offered me. From the window I saw the patrol start and disappear among the curves as if she had never existed. But she had. And I couldn't keep it to myself. That night, at a roadside hotel, I wrote the whole story from the first curve to the coffee. I posted it in a trucker's Facebook group, Souls of the Road MX. I uploaded 3 photos, the blue ramp sign, the tire tracks on the gravel, and the glass cup of coffee with the chipped rim. I didn't expect much. But in less than a day, my phone became a swarm. Thousands of shares. Comments from truckers all over Mexico. "I also lost brakes in that mountain. They didn't help my brother and he didn't come back. That woman is an angel." Someone edited my story with music and put it on TikTok. In hours it was running through WhatsApp groups along the routes. The nickname came quickly, the Guardian of the Spine. Someone uploaded an old photo of her, taken on another highway, patrol lights on in the background. And suddenly, truck stops began plastering her laminated face beside images of the Virgin. At a stop in San Luis, I saw her face on a poster with red letters. "Thank you for guiding us, Lieutenant Mara." That day I understood what we lived was no longer mine. It belonged to everyone. What happens when a story stops being about a single driver and becomes the banner of an entire guild? Stay until the end because what happened next with Mara Salgado was bigger than anyone could have imagined. And remember, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss these stories that unite us on the road. One Saturday, at 6 in the morning, I woke up with my phone buzzing non-stop. Videos, photos, audios. All from the Espinazo. More than 100 trucks gathered in a caravan, climbing slowly with black flags on their mirrors, red ribbons waving from antennas, flowers tied to grills. One after another, in silence. It wasn't a protest, it wasn't a show. It was respect. At the entrance to the ramp where I had been saved, they planted a steel cross with a plaque that read, "To those who left without return, and to those who came back by miracle. Thank you, Lieutenant Mara." She arrived without uniform, in a borrowed pickup, worn jeans and a white t-shirt. No one had invited her, but someone told her, and she didn't want to miss it. When the truckers saw her, the engines went silent. Everyone got out. They lined up on their own, without orders, hardened men, women of the road, sons and wives. One by one they came forward. They gave her a flower, a hug, a thermos of coffee, a thank you with tearful eyes. An old man with a white beard handed her a tin cup. When we lose a brother of the road, we leave coffee on the shoulder. Today this coffee is for the one who gave one back to us. She held it in both hands and cried. Not out of sadness, but out of soul. She cried like someone releasing 20 years of silence. I went up and hugged her again. This time not trembling with fear, but with respect and promise. In that silence of dead engines, all together we sounded the horns at the same time. It wasn't noise, it was a mechanical prayer, a song of steel for the living and the fallen. The spine of the winds thundered like never before, and for a second, even the ravines seemed to listen. A month later, I took my son Nico. I wanted to show him the place, the cross, the plaque. We walked together to the ramp. I told him everything, without embellishment. He listened seriously, eyes wide. When I finished, he stayed quiet, then said something that broke me. "Dad, I also want to be someone who stands in front. To not let anyone die alone on the road." Since then, he carries the wooden charm in his backpack, and every time I pass through the spine I slow down, turn on my lights, and honk twice. Once for me, once for her. Because now I know not all heroes wear capes. Some wear uniforms and a heart that plants itself before destiny. If this story moved you, subscribe and share it with someone you love. Here we keep telling the experiences of those who make Mexico's highways not just asphalt, but memory and life. And if you want to support this project, you can invite me to a symbolic coffee at the link below. Each coffee is like a hug in the middle of the road. Thank you for staying this far. See you on the next curve, because the spine of the wind still holds stories waiting to be told. The caravan ended, but the story was just beginning. For weeks, in every freight yard where I stopped, someone would come up to ask me, "Are you the one from the spine?" The trailer without brakes. I didn't know how to react. I didn't feel like a hero, far from it. I had just clung to the wheel because there was no other choice. She was the one who put her life on the line. I repeated it again and again. The credit belongs to Lieutenant Salgado. But people wanted to hear my version. They wanted to relive that descent as if in my words was a secret manual for surviving the devil. A local reporter called me one afternoon. "We want to record your testimony for regional TV. They say you lived it." I hesitated, but agreed. I sat in front of a camera, sweating under the lights, and told what I could. I didn't embellish it. I said what it was, Mara's voice on the radio, the siren clearing the way, the miracle of the ramp. The program aired on a Sunday. What I didn't imagine was what came next. Dozens of messages from truckers all over Mexico. "Brother, I also went down with the brakes blown in Maltrata. It happened to me in a cult cingo and I never told it. I lost my compadre in the Sierra Gorda. Stories that had slept in silence came to light because someone, a woman, had dared to guide me in front of everyone. One afternoon I got a message that made me tremble. It came from an unknown number. "Mateo, this is Mara. Can we talk?" I almost dropped my phone in shock. I replied instantly. We agreed to meet at a roadside diner, the kind that smells of freshly puffed tortillas and reheated coffee. She arrived on time, without uniform, in a blue jacket and with her hair down. She greeted me with a light smile, but in her eyes there was still that spark of steel that held me on the descent. "I wanted to thank you for what you wrote," she said. "You made it bigger than it is." I laughed. "No, the other way around. You made big something that would have ended in a roadside cross." We talked for hours. She told me about her daughter, how she tries to give her a normal life even though the job never leaves her in peace. She confessed that every time she drives down the spine, she passes the needle curve and feels her father with her. I told her about Nico, how he now carries my charm in his backpack and makes me promise to come back in one piece every weekend. In that diner there were no sirens, no adrenaline, just two souls who had shared the edge of death and now shared a plate of beans with fresh cheese. That same night I got more unexpected news. A group of truckers was organizing a national tribute in Durango, right at the entrance to the Devil's Backbone. They wanted to officially recognize Mara, with press, with authorities, with families. She called me. "I'm not sure about going. I don't like the noise." I told her, "It's not noise, Mara. It's echo. The echo of what you did. And sometimes echo saves too." What happens when a woman who doesn't seek recognition becomes the symbol of an entire guild? Stay until the end because what happened at that tribute would change the destiny of more than one delivery driver. And remember, subscribe so you don't miss this story that's still alive in every curve of Mexico. The day of the tribute dawned foggy. Hundreds of trucks parked in line, decorated with ribbons, wreaths of flowers, banners with messages of gratitude. There were entire families, children running between giant tires, old truckers with faded caps, women cooking pots of menudo to share. At the center of it all, an improvised platform with a microphone and a flag waving weakly in the wind. When Mara arrived, the crowd fell silent. She was dressed simply, black pants and a white shirt, no epaulets or stripes. And yet, she looked taller than anyone. Not by height, but by what she carried, the faith of thousands. One by one, the truckers came forward. They gave her symbolic things, an old glove, a holy card, a thermos, a crucifix, a sweaty cap. Things that seem small, but on the road are treasures. I stepped onto the platform and spoke without notes. She didn't just save me. She saved the promise that none of us is alone on the road. Today, the spine has an angel of flesh and bone. The people applauded. Mara lowered her gaze, uncomfortable but moved. And that's when something unexpected happened. A young woman pushed through the crowd with a boy by the hand. She stepped to the microphone and said, "My father died here 10 years ago. Today, thanks to you, I feel like someone was there for him. Thank you, Lieutenant." Silence fell. And Mara, who always had words to hold up others, found none. She just hugged the woman and the boy, and in that embrace, we all fit. The news spread. National newspapers spoke of the guardian of the spine. A documentary began filming. Even the Secretariat announced new emergency ramps in other stretches of the country. The story had sparked a movement. I watched as a spectator and asked myself, how could something so personal, so intimate as my fear on that descent, have triggered so much? That question was answered weeks later, in the least expected place. It was midnight. I was driving with a load of groceries toward Mazatlan, when the CB radio spat static and a desperate voice came through, "This is Unit 59 TR. I lost brakes. I'm empty, but they're not catching. I'm 3 curves from the needle. Help." My heart lurched. I heard again the roar of the wind, the pedal sinking, the loneliness. Without thinking, I answered, "This is Mateo Avila. You're not alone. Hold on, brother. I'm right behind you." My mind lit up like an engine on descent. I couldn't clear the road like Mara. I had no siren, no patrol car. But I had a voice. And the voice, I already knew, could hold up a life. I spoke calmly, copying the words Mara had told me. Don't fight the tail, let it dance. Look ahead, not in the mirror. Hold on with the engine. The ramp is 900 meters away. I'll guide you. And I guided him. Curve by curve, breathing with him, holding him with my voice as she had held me. When the young man managed to enter the ramp, he cried over the radio like a child. And I cried too. Because I understood the chain had not broken. What Mara gave me that afternoon, I now gave to another. And so, from voice to voice, from wheel to wheel, life goes on. Do you see? What began with a rescue had become a legacy. But there was still a test left, one more curve that neither Mara nor I expected, and that would test everything we had learned. Don't go away, stay until the end, and remember to subscribe because what's coming is the true climax of this story. Months passed. Life went on, because life on the road never stops. New trips, new loads, cold dawns and endless sunsets. But since that time on the spine, nothing was ever the same. Every time my foot touched the pedal, even if it worked perfectly, I felt that emptiness in the soul, that memory etched in the skin. And every time I heard the CB crackle, my ear involuntarily searched for Mara's voice, as if she were still there, guiding me. One Saturday afternoon, Nico asked me something that froze me. We were at home, building together a model truck we had bought at a flea market, when he said, "Dad, I want to go with you on the route. I want to see the spine." I looked at him hard, with that mix of pride and fear only a father understands. My instinct wanted to say no, that place was cursed, no child should see it up close. But then I thought of the promise I had made that time, to show him the cross, the plaque, the place where I understood heroes exist. I took a deep breath. All right, Nico. I'll take you. But it'll be a trip of respect, not a joyride. Understood. He smiled as if I'd given him the greatest gift of his life. The next day, we left early on a light trip. Small load, just a few pallets of appliances. The sky was clear, but the wind was already roaring between the hills, reminding us there is never total calm there. Nico sat beside me, fascinated, with his little backpack and the wooden charm hanging from his neck. He asked me questions about everything. The gear shift, the changes, the engine brake. I answered patiently, though inside a restlessness pounded like a drum. I didn't want him to see the worst of the road, but I knew the road isn't controlled, it's respected. We were descending on one of the softer stretches when, suddenly, the CB radio exploded with static and a desperate voice came through, broken by sobs. "This is Unit 77GH, loaded with fuel. I lost pressure. Brakes not responding. I'm heading straight for the dagger curve." My blood ran cold. The dagger was the deadliest curve on the stretch, even worse than the needle. I knew it, a sharp turn with an open ravine and no margin for error. I remembered all the crosses I had seen there, white as bones against the rock. Nico looked at me with wide eyes, understanding that something serious was happening. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the microphone. "This is Matteo Avila. I'm descending with my son. I hear you, brother. You're not alone. Hold on, we're getting you out." Before the young man could answer, another voice cut in, firm, familiar, a blade of steel in the chaos. "This is Lieutenant Mara Salgado. I'm heading to the dagger. Matteo, do you copy?" My heart jumped. "I copy, Mara. I'm on the wind straight, with Nico on board. The guy's loaded with fuel and no brakes." Her response was immediate, steady. "I'll take the lead. Matteo, stay behind him and keep communication. Don't leave him alone for a second. I'll clear ahead, you hold the rear. Today nobody's going down." A chill ran through me. Nico clutched the wooden charm and whispered, "Dad, is that the woman who saved you?" I nodded. "Yes, son. And today we're saving with her." What would you do if your child is in the cab and suddenly you have to risk your life again, this time guiding not only a fellow driver, but also his eyes? Stay until the end, because what happened at the dagger curve changed everything forever. And subscribe now, because these road stories are so real you feel them in your skin. The fuel truck appeared in the previous curve, a white steel beast with side tanks shining in the sun. The trailer shook like it was about to come apart. In the mirror I saw fire on the rear wheels, sparks falling like cursed rain. Mara's patrol was already ahead, blue lights clearing the lane. The truck charged like a runaway bull. I was behind, Nico pressed to his seat, listening to the young driver sobbing on the radio. "I don't want to die. I don't want to tell my mom." "Listen to me." I roared into the mic, "Don't think about dying. Think about every meter you hold. Breathe with me. 1, 2, 1, 2. Hold on, brother. You're not alone. Look at me, Nico, look at me. This man's coming out because we say so." The kid cried, but obeyed. Mara shouted through the loudspeaker, "Clear the way! Fuel unit with no brakes." Cars scattered like ants. Some pulled aside so fast they slammed into the embankment. The siren bit the air. And then came the dagger. The curve appeared like a hook of stone hanging over the abyss. The young man cried, "I can't make it, I can't." And Mara, voice firm as rock, ordered, "Turn now. Without fear, I've got you." The truck tilted brutally. The fuel inside slammed against the tank walls like a raging sea. Tires screeched. Metal groaned. Nico gripped my hand tight. The trailer leaned so far I thought it would fall, but miraculously bit the pavement with the tire's edge and straightened back. The kid screamed over the radio, nearly hysterical. I shouted back, "You're there, brother. You passed the worst. The ramp's ahead, less than a kilometer." Mara never let up. "Look at me, driver, look at me. I'll go in first, you right behind. Don't let go. Trust my light." The stench of burnt rubber filled the cab. Nico coughed but never looked away. The young man hit the final straight with the truck at 120, a projectile loaded with liquid fire. The emergency ramp appeared, a blue sign trembling in the wind. Mara pulled aside, making room. "Now, go in now," she shouted. The trailer swerved hard, kicking up dust like a storm. The ramp swallowed it. Gravel flying, tires bursting, a roar mixed with a human wail. I watched as the beast buried itself little by little, like a wild animal forced down. And then, silence. Blessed silence. The driver was alive. He wept, pounding the wheel with his fists, thanking between sobs. Mara parked the patrol on the side. I got out with Nico and ran to him. The three of us pulled him out, shaking but whole. Nico hugged him like a brother. And in that gesture I understood it hadn't just been a rescue. It had been a lesson for my son, an inheritance of courage. Can you imagine what it means for a child to see up close how life is saved in the middle of hell? Stay with me, because this is only setting the stage for an ending you won't believe. Subscribe and hit the bell. What's coming will test not only Mara and me, but everyone who believes in the road. The young driver, hands still trembling, collapsed to his knees in the ramp's gravel. He pulled off the dangling safety helmet and breathed like a fish out of water. Nico hugged him tight, surprising us all. "You're alive, brother," my son told him, with a voice that seemed borrowed from someone older. The boy cried like a child, leaning on my son's shoulders, repeating, thank you, I don't know how, thank you." Mara approached slowly, with the calm only those who have stared death in the face without blinking can carry. She knelt, took his face in both hands, and spoke firmly, "Don't thank me. Thank the road that let you learn the lesson. And promise me you'll never again trust a pedal without checking it 3 times before a descent." The young man nodded through tears. I looked at her, and felt again that day she guided me. It was as if her voice could weave a bridge between life and death, reminding us that the impossible can also be tamed when someone believes with you. We stayed there a while, listening as the truck's engine still crackled while cooling on the ramp. The pines swayed in a wind that seemed to tell the story in its own way, as if the mountains had witnessed it and wanted to etch it into stone. Then, more units arrived, an ambulance, a couple of patrols, other truckers who had seen it. No one asked much. Everyone knew. The eyes of the people said it all. They had just witnessed another miracle on the spine of the winds. One of the old truckers, A man with a scruffy beard and leathered hands came up and patted my shoulder. "You're the same Mateo, right? From last time. The lieutenant's guy." I nodded, a little embarrassed. "Well, now you're not just the one who got saved. Today you were a guiding voice. That's something you pass on, brother. What she planted in you, you've already passed to someone else." His words knotted my throat. I looked at Nico, still holding the young man in an embrace, and I understood that what had happened that afternoon wasn't chance. It was the beginning of something bigger. Have you ever felt that life puts you in the same place twice, but the second time it's not for you to survive, it's for you to be the one who saves? Stay with me until the end, because this story isn't over. And remember to subscribe, because here we keep sharing true stories of delivery drivers who become legends of the road. The news spread like fire in dry grass. By the next day, videos of the rescue were already circulating in trucker WhatsApp groups. You could hear my voice on the radio, Mara's orders, the young man's cries, and the roar of the ramp. Some called it the miracle of the dagger. Others said the spine had bowed to the union of two voices, the lieutenant's and mine. I wasn't comfortable with that. I knew the truth. Without Mara, I'd have been a roadside cross the first time. But people need symbols, and that story began to grow. Truckers started talking about the chain, an invisible line of voices that don't let go, that pass strength from one to another to keep holding the wheel. And every time someone said, the chain, they'd pat my shoulder. Mara and I met again at the mountain post days later. This time was different. It wasn't the hug of survivors, but of companions who understood they had opened something even they couldn't measure. She confessed something that cut deep. "Mateo, every time a rescue like this happens, my legs shake afterward. Never during, only after. And I wonder how much longer my body will hold. Because the soul wants to keep going, but the body also collects its debt." I didn't know what to say. I myself felt that since my descent, my back wasn't the same, my hands went numb more easily, my nights were shorter. The road charges. It always charges. That confession left me uneasy. And unease turned to real fear a couple of weeks later, when something none of us expected happened. It was a cloudy Tuesday. I was headed to Guadalajara with a load of refrigerated medicines. Reports started coming in over the radio about a multiple accident on the spine. A tanker, 2 trailers, and several cars caught in a pileup on the Coyote Curve. The news said there was fire, the road was closed. My first thought was, where's Mara? Minutes later I confirmed it. She was there. She had gone in before everyone else, trying to coordinate evacuations while flames grew around the tanker. My heart clenched. This time it wasn't me going downhill without brakes. It was her, inside a hell that could explode any second. What would you do if the person who once saved your life was now in the middle of a fire that could wipe everything out? Stay, because what happened in that accident was the greatest challenge we ever faced on the Spine of the Winds. And subscribe now, because this story still has a long road ahead. The smell of burnt diesel could be felt kilometers before. The thick fog covering the spine that afternoon mixed with black smoke climbing like a snake into the sky. I was just descending when the radios began screeching with frantic messages. Pile up on the Coyote Curve. A tanker stuck. Fire, fire. It took out 2 trailers more. Support needed, urgent, urgent. My heart pounded. I gripped the CB mic. Who's on site? Report. And there came the voice I didn't want to hear under those conditions, clear but tense, cut by sirens. This is Lieutenant Mara Salgado. I'm on site. There's fuel leakage and active fire. 2 drivers trapped in cabs. I need reinforcements now. The world spun. I didn't hesitate. I shifted gears and pushed toward the smoke cloud. Nico was with me because he'd come along on that short trip. I looked at him. His eyes were wide, scared, but he said nothing. He just squeezed my hand and murmured, "Dad, let's help." Rounding the curve, the scene hit me like a punch. A tanker sprawled across almost both lanes, its tank dented from impact and a stream of fuel gushing like a torn vein. Behind it, a trailer with the cab crumpled like an accordion, jammed against the rock barrier. Further back, Another truck buried nose first into the ditch. Flames were beginning to bite at the cargo tarp and climb toward the tanks. Mara's patrol was off to the side, lights flashing, but she wasn't inside. I saw her running through the smoke, hammering the twisted cab door with a metal bar. With each second, the flames grew higher. I jumped from my truck with Nico behind me. "Stay at the shoulder, son," I shouted, but he was already pulling a little water bottle from his backpack, as if that could put out a fire. I hugged him quickly. "Listen to me, don't move from here. If anything happens, run up the mountain and don't look back." "Understood." He nodded, tears in his eyes. I ran to where Mara was. The heat was unbearable, a wall trying to shove me back. "Mateo, no!" she screamed. "Back off, this is going to blow." But I was already at her side. "Don't tell me to back off when you're here yourself. Tell me what to do." She gritted her teeth, slammed the door in frustration. "The driver's alive, I can hear him. But the cab won't give." Together we jammed the bar into the frame and pulled with all our strength. The metal screeched, bent just a little. Inside, a groan could be heard. Suddenly, a small explosion shook the rear of the tanker. A jet of fire whipped out. The heat tore at the skin of our arms. Mara looked at me with fury and fear mixed. "If we don't get him out now, it's over." In that instant, a group of truckers who had stopped their rigs came running toward us. They carried extinguishers, ropes, even hammers. They weren't rescuers, they were brothers of the road. One of them shouted, "Chain, chain!" And I understood. The same chain that had saved the one at the dagger was now forming here, in the middle of the smoke. We took turns hammering, pulling, spraying extinguishers at every flame that came close. The noise was deafening, the roar of fire, the shouts, the distant horns. And suddenly, the door gave way. The driver's body came out halfway, unconscious, scorched. Together we dragged him out. "The other one!" Mara shouted, pointing to the trailer behind. "There's another trapped in the cab." We ran there, boots sinking in fuel. The fire was already licking the windshield. Without thinking, I shoved half my body through the broken window. A man hung from his seatbelt, unconscious. I cut it with a knife and he fell into my arms. I pulled him out as best I could, with help from the others. At that second, a larger blast shook the tanker. A wave of heat knocked us to the ground. The sky turned orange. I felt the air ripped from my lungs. I thought it was the end. But Mara grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the ditch. We rolled among rocks, coughing, covered in soot. When I raised my head, I saw Nico up on the hill, crying, hands over his mouth. When he saw me lift my hand, he shouted my name and ran down. I hugged him tight, as if the whole world was in that instant. The two drivers were alive, unconscious but breathing. The truckers laid them on the ground as fire truck and ambulance sirens grew closer. The fire roared behind, but the important part was done. We had pulled 2 men from the claws of the mountain. Mara dropped onto the gravel, face black with smoke, eyes wet. I looked at her. She barely smiled. "Again, Mateo. Again we made it." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, feeling in that moment what it meant to share destiny. And what if I tell you that wasn't the last time the spine tried to claim lives? That what came next made all of Mexico talk about delivery drivers like never before? Stay until the end, because what's coming is even bigger. And remember, subscribe, because this story still has curves ahead. The tanker's massive explosion was heard kilometers away. When the news reached national radio, the headlines echoed. "Accident on the Devil's Backbone. 2 truckers rescued from flames. Highway heroism. An officer and truckers form human chain. The devil wanted to collect, but life won." The images went viral, videos shot by drivers who managed to flee before the blast. In one, you could clearly see Mara pulling a man from the cab seconds before the fire consumed everything. In another, my silhouette carrying the unconscious driver while others smothered sparks with extinguishers. In all, the collective shout, "Chain, chain!" In less than 24 hours, The entire country was talking about what had happened. Newspapers, newscasts, radio shows. Some called us heroes of the spine. Others said we had defied death recklessly. I didn't feel like a hero. I was more exhausted than ever, arms covered in burns, throat scraped from smoke. But when I looked at Nico, his eyes shining with pride, I understood we had done what had to be done. Mara, on the other hand, faced another battle. On the third day, she received a summons from headquarters. They accused her of risking her life and civilians without authorization. They wanted to sanction her. I found out from a message she sent, "If they discharge me, I want you to know, it was worth it. Every second. See you soon, Mateo." I couldn't allow it. Not after what she had done for me, for the boy at the dagger, for the two at the coyote. I called every contact I had in the trucker groups. I asked them to spread the word. Within hours, social networks filled with messages under one hashtag. Hashtag Mara is not alone. Thousands of truckers, from Chiapas to Tijuana, sent photos honking horns, raising coffee thermoses in respect, writing stories of how someone had once saved them on the road. A week later, outside the Durango command, more than 300 trucks parked in line. I was there with Nico. The roar of horns was a protest that shook the city. Media filmed. People applauded from sidewalks. It wasn't a strike, it wasn't a blockade, it was support. Support for a woman who had proven that highways aren't faced with regulations, but with heart. When Mara came out, the crowd erupted in cheers. She hadn't sought applause, but she received it with tears in her eyes. A superior tried to speak, but the voices of hundreds of truckers drowned him out. In the end, the sanction was suspended. Officially, they said, her bravery should be recognized and replicated in road safety protocols. Unofficially, we all knew the voice of the road had outweighed any stamped paper. Nico, perched on my shoulders, shouted loudly, "Thank you, Mara." She heard him, looked up, and smiled. Then she came over and placed her hand on his head. "Always take care of your dad, champ. The road needs witnesses like you." That moment marked my son. Since then, he began recording truckers' testimonies on his phone during every trip with me. He interviewed hardened men and brave women, asking, "What's been your toughest curve? Who once saved you?" He uploaded the videos online, and little by little it grew into a project bigger than we imagined. He called it Voices of the Road. Each story added to it. A driver stranded in the mountains, helped by strangers. A delivery woman who crossed storms to bring medicine to a cut-off village. A mechanic who, without charging a peso, repaired brakes in the middle of the night so someone could go on. And in all those voices, the same word always appeared: chain. Do you see? What began as a rescue had become a movement, an invisible network binding those who live behind the wheel. But one more test was still ahead, one that would put Mara and all of us before the hardest decision. Stay with me until the end, because what's coming could forever change the story of delivery drivers in Mexico. And don't forget to subscribe, because here we keep telling the stories the asphalt holds. The voices of the road movement kept growing when the mountains decided to remind us that up there, the calendar is set by the wind, not the days. A little over a month had passed since the explosion on the Coyote Curve. I was hauling a mixed load, boxes of 4 fluids, canned goods, and 2 pallets of supplies for a rural hospital. Nico was with me, like almost every weekend since he'd started his channel. That afternoon, the spine of the winds was in one of its moods. A low sun stabbing blades of light between patches of fog drifting across the road like lazy ghosts. Suddenly, the CB filled with tangled voices and bursts of static. Rockslide at kilometer 132, rocks on the road. Tanker climbing with minor leak. Family vehicle trapped between rocks. I shifted in my seat instinctively. That mix of words didn't sit well with me. Rocks, leak, family, tanker. Stories with those ingredients don't usually end in applause. I sped up just enough to get closer to the reported point. Nico, with his notebook, scribbled like a war reporter, but looked at me waiting for an order. "Breathe, son," I told him, as if that could chase off bad omens. "First we look, then we decide." Around a blind curve, the scene hit me like a punch. An entire hillside had ripped open like an old seam. Rocks the size of washing machines blocked the uphill lane and half of the downhill. In the middle of the chaos, a maroon family SUV sat trapped with its front axle twisted and its windshield spiderwebbed. Behind it, a gray sedan jammed against a slope. And further back on the straight, the threatening silhouette, a silver tanker, fully loaded, its driver fighting inertia to keep from sliding toward the pileup. A shiny trickle ran down the tank side and dripped onto the asphalt, forming a puddle that reeked of solvent. "Minor leak," they said. "Sure. Minor, for now." I braked before the obstacle, turned on hazards, and opened the door. The wind carried a whistle that confused orders with prayers. A man pounded on the maroon SUV's door. "My wife and little girl are inside." Through the broken glass I saw a woman pinned by her seatbelt and a girl with her face dusty, eyes wide like saucers. The sedan held a conscious but dazed driver. And the tanker, God help us, climbing slowly, skidding on loose rocks, struggling against gravity. Over the radio came a voice that froze me but also anchored me to the ground. "This is Lieutenant Mara Salgado. I'm arriving from above. Mateo, do you copy?" "Copy loud and clear," I answered without thinking. "We've got a family trapped and a leaking tanker too curves up. If the driver loses traction or anyone starts an engine near the puddle, this turns into an oven." "Copy," she said. "I'll take control from above. You handle the lower side. And listen, if I have to choose between stopping the tanker or clearing a path for the family, you need to understand what I'm going to ask." The words hung like a suspended knife. I moved to the maroon SUV. "Ma'am, I'm not pulling until we secure the seatbelt. Do you hear me?" I said loudly, cutting through the broken glass. She nodded, squeezing her daughter's hand. "Nico," I called, and saw my boy come over wide-eyed, swallowing fear. "Go to the trunk. Get the first aid kit and the emergency knife. Stay here with me until further instruction. If you smell solvent strong, don't even breathe loud." He nodded seriously, like a little soldier. Behind me, the radio crackled with Mara's voice, harder than the rock. "Attention all units. Shut off engines within 200 meters of the spill. No smoking, no sparks. Tanker unit climbing. Identify." A nervous voice replied, "Tanker 34PX, loaded with industrial solvent, 30,000 liters. Minor clamp failure. Climbing with engine brake. Losing traction." 34PX, listen to my voice," she said, not a tremor in it. "Stay in your lane, no sharp moves. When I signal, I'll stop you with a wedge maneuver. Don't fight the wheel on the rocks. Let me position you. Mateo, do you have any units behind to use as anchors?" I looked around, 3 delivery trailers, 1 flatbed with lumber, a dump truck with sacks of construction sand. "I've got sand," I reported. "Perfect," Mara said. "We're going to build ourselves a ramp." The word ramp lit a memory in my hands. I turned to the dump truck full of sacks and raised my arm. The driver, a dark-skinned man with a wide mustache and eyes that said, "I get it," ran over. "We unload here, brother?" he asked straight. "Not all," I said. "Half a dozen, torn open, along the downhill lane before the spill. Rip them halfway to release coarse sand. If the tanker slips toward us, let it meet that." 2 more jumped in right away. In minutes, knives slit sacks and sand poured like golden rain, forming an imperfect cord across the asphalt. I leaned into the SUV window. "Ma'am, I'm cutting the belt. Hold your girl. Once you're out, I'll get you clear of the spill. We'll move up that slope." "My leg," she said, biting back pain. "We'll get it out together. On 3. Nico stood beside me, holding the headlamp we use when hands aren't enough. 1, 2, 3. The belt snapped with a crack and the world sped up. The woman screamed, the girl cried, and into that chorus came Mara's voice cutting the air, "Wedge now." I looked up. From above, crossing the lane, 2 guard trucks, one driven by her, had moved ahead of the tanker. In a maneuver only those who've danced with inertia understand, Mara nudged the patrol's nose against the tanker's front flank, very gently, almost a steel kiss, pushing it just toward the lane's center. The other unit mirrored from the opposite side. "Don't fight, 34PX, she shouted over the radio. "We've got you." The driver obeyed that voice like it was the only rope keeping him from the void. The tanker stopped swaying. Behind it, the sand cord waited like a friend with open arms. I finished pulling the woman and girl out. I carried them one by one up the slope. A trucker stripped off his shirt and pressed it to the girl's forehead to stop a small bleed. The sedan driver, staggering, walked out on his own with help. For a few seconds, the world seemed to obey coordination. Until the mountains remembered their nature. A rock, no bigger than a TV, decided to break loose off beat, rolled slowly, then faster, and struck the spill's edge. The solvent spread like a hungry tongue, touched the hot tire of a vehicle, and released a thread of white smoke. "Back!" I shouted, breathless. "Back, back, back!" Nico grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her uphill, like he had been born for that second. What happens when the mountain moves one piece and the whole board slips from your hands? Stay with me until the end, because what happened in that instant wasn't in any protocol, and subscribe right now. This story still has more curves to take than you think. The white smoke thickened, mischievous and murderous. The chemical stench turned into a knife. The tanker, held by the wedge, slipped half a meter toward the sand cordon. "Hold it," said Mara, pressing her patrol against the beast with a bravery that seemed impossible. Over the radio, her voice became a hammer. "All units, push the sand with shovels, with feet, with whatever you have. Widen the zone." There weren't enough shovels, but there were boots, hands, and urgency. In seconds, 6 truckers were smearing sand with their saws, dragging it toward the puddle, improvising dikes with ripped sacks. The wind spat dust in our faces. The throat burned. The skin burned. And yet, fear couldn't find a seat. The family was already out of immediate danger. The woman shivered from the pain in her leg. The girl stared in silence, as if reality were a drawing she didn't understand. Nico stayed by her side, eyes locked on me, but speaking to the girl with a calm I didn't know he had. "Look at my charm," he said, showing her the little wooden skull. "My grandpa and I made it. When you look at it, you breathe better. Look, 1, 2, 1, 2. The girl, obedient to children's magic, breathed with him. The world needed that breath to keep from bursting. 34PX, Mara said again. "We're going to give 2 meters into the sand at the same time. I release a centimeter, you release a centimeter. Do you understand? On my call." "Copy," replied the tanker driver, his voice a thin thread threatening to snap. "Now," she said. And 2 beasts of steel moved as one. The tanker bit into the first sand cordon and sank just enough, gaining a grip it hadn't had in 20 minutes of hell. "Another," Mara ordered. "Now." The second bite into the sand was deeper. The leak, redirected toward a gentler slope, stopped spreading into the downhill lane and began running into a natural gully carved by stones. I saw in her mind that geometry of life, not stopping the water, but teaching it a course. The meters turned into millimeters. Time became a rubber band stretched with cruelty. And then, the radio slashed our breath. Unit 21 reporting. "There's another vehicle ahead, small cargo van, shut off on the straight, 2 people inside, unconscious. The spill will reach them in 2 minutes if we don't fully contain it." I looked ahead. In the blur of fog, a silhouette barely visible. 2 minutes. No life can fit in 2 minutes, but sometimes it has to. Mara went silent for a second. She knew what we all knew. If she released the wedge and ran for the ones above, the tanker could run wild or the spill could shift course. If she stayed, 2 people 50 meters away might become crosses. Decisions no one should ever face on an ordinary afternoon. "Mateo," she said, calling me with an urgency I've only heard in births and farewells. "I need you to be me on that straight. Take your rig. Hook the cable to the small van and drag it out of the spill's path. Don't start the engine near the solvent. Put it in neutral and use gravity. When I say, you push. Nico stays up top, far away. Can you?" I didn't think. Thinking doesn't exist when 2 strangers' hearts are thrown into your hands. "I can," I answered. "Nico with you. I told a trucker who already knew me from the caravan. Plant him behind that rock. If he moves, you scream me dead. I climbed into my truck faster than I remembered my bones could move. Yanked out the tow cable, ran it snaking through the rocks, anchored it to the little van's chassis with burning hands, and with 2 others helping, we released the handbrake. "On my call, Mateo," said Mara, and her voice set a steel bar in my spine. "Now." I released my truck's parking brake, let inertia take over the whole set. I pulled gently, as if coaxing a frightened horse to follow me. The van resisted. Skidded. Skidded again. "One more," I muttered, not knowing if I spoke to myself or to life. The van gave an inch, then another. The cable sang a sharp note. I felt my back giving out, my lungs tearing. And the van finally entered that minimal angle where gravity becomes an ally. It began to roll. I guided it, fingers barely touching the wheel, as if even a breeze could anger it. One trucker hung from a post as human counterweight, another set a chalk ahead of its path. We became watchmakers of death, arranging gears that refused to turn. We pulled it out. I dragged it to a gravel clearing, away from the improvised channel. 2 people inside, unconscious but warm. The same men who had fought the fire now became makeshift medics. Someone brought bicarbonate from a first aid kit, someone else water. Roadside science is rough but eternal. If there's none, you invent it. If it's not enough, you share it. If no one comes, we come ourselves. I looked uphill again. The tanker was now steady on a bed of sand that looked like a beach. Mara, forehead drenched and jaw clenched, kept her patrol car pressed into the wedge. She shot me a brief look, one of those that says everything without sound. "You did it." I gave her a thumbs up, with a strength that came from deep in my gut. And just as the air seemed to return to our chests, the mountain, playful and cruel, wanted to remind us who ruled. A dry thunder, cloudless, rumbled through the valley. It wasn't the sky. It was the slope. Above, a crack opened like an evil smile. "Secondary landslide," someone shouted over the radio. I lifted my eyes and saw it. A tongue of small stones, fast, coming diagonally toward the sand cordon. If it burst the channel, the spill would change course and carve a diagonal of death toward where we had placed the rescued. "Everyone back now," ordered Mara with an authority that sliced the air like a machete. No one argued. Bodies obeyed the tone more than the words. I ran to the wine-colored SUV family, ready to carry the girl if necessary. Nico was already on his feet, fists clenched, gaze fixed on the crack. "Dad, the old road curve," he suddenly said, pointing to a disused path slanting down toward a natural ditch. "If we open it there, the water," he said, "water," and I wanted to correct him, but it wasn't the moment. "Goes that way and doesn't enter the clearing." I followed the line with my eyes. He was right. An old groove, maybe from when that path was used for cattle, descended like a shortcut toward a kind of natural hollow. "Nico, you're a genius," I said, and my hands were already grabbing empty sacks to guide the tongue. I shouted to 2 nearby. "With me. Let's open a channel here." In seconds we were tracing a makeshift canal, kicking stones, clearing with fingers, arranging sacks like poor but stubborn walls. The first rain of gravel hit the sand cordon and dislodged it a little. Another rain tried to break it. Our channel caught part of it and spat it toward the ditch. For once, the mountain listened to the small ones. See what I mean? Sometimes the hero doesn't carry a badge or a wheel. Sometimes he carries a backpack and a notebook. Stay until the end, because this curve is only telling half its story. Subscribe, because the blow no one saw coming is still ahead. The secondary landslide calmed as if it had satisfied its whim. The tanker stood planted on its sand beach, the leak now channeled into the ditch. The rescued were breathing. The gray sedan was safe. The wine-colored family, too. The girl, clinging to Nico's pendant, finally cried the way you cry when everything is already over and the body learns afterward. She hugged my son with a gratitude that needed no language. I looked for Mara. She was still at her post, unmoving, pressing her patrol against the monster, as if letting go could bring the tragedy back. I approached and tapped her window. She rolled it down slightly. "Until relief and sealing arrive," she said, anticipating my question. If I leave before, I'll regret it the rest of my life. We're here, I replied. No one moves until this smells like stone and not death. The firefighters finally arrived with foam and new clamps. They sealed the leak with a speed explained only by craft and hard-earned stories. The ambulance took the unconscious. The woman from the wine SUV climbed carefully, helped by 2 truckers. The girl waved her hand, and I felt that gesture was worth a country. The radios began lowering their volume, as if the mountain muted the tragedy. And just when we thought the chapter was ready to simmer in roadside talk, another voice broke over the radio, unknown, trembling not from the road but from the soul. Attention, attention! I need help at kilometer 137. A delivery unit. No brakes. Repeat, no brakes. Coming from above. I can't clear the road. The driver is alone. And, he's my brother. The word brother hung in the air, biting the afternoon. I felt a cramp shoot through me from heels to teeth. Mara looked at me. She said nothing, but in her eyes was the question that opens the next scene, the decision that demands another rope, another miracle, another wedge, another chain. I looked at Nico. He already knew. He slung on his backpack, tucked away his notebook, and without saying it said, "Let's go." How many times can you tempt fate before it collects with interest? Stay with me, because what came at kilometer 137 was not a rescue. It was a test of faith for all of us. Subscribe and ring the bell. We haven't yet taken the last curve. The radio still crackled with the boy's plea. He's my brother. No brakes. Kilometer 137, he's loaded. I don't have time to clear the road. I looked at Mara. Her face, still smudged with soot, tightened like a rope. Mateo, we get no rest. The road has already decided. I nodded. The chain doesn't break. Let's go. We climbed into our vehicles. Nico, against all logic, settled once again at my side. I looked at him sternly. Son, stay back, you've seen enough. He answered with a shine in his eyes that made me understand. He wasn't a scared child, he was part of the chain. Dad, if you let me, I'll help. I don't want to see anyone die. Like she did with you. I swallowed hard. There was no time to argue. I started the engine. The spine roared under the wheels, and the echo of sirens and motors blended with the whistle of the wind. On the straightaway at km 137, the beast appeared, a trailer loaded with rebar, more than 25 tons unleashed like knives of steel, barreling down out of control, tires burning, black smoke pouring like a predator's breath. Behind it, on foot, the driver's brother ran uselessly along the shoulder, screaming. Mara took the mic. Unit with no brakes, this is Lieutenant Salgado. You're not alone. We're going to get you into the ramp after Skull Curve. Do you copy? A broken voice answered through static and sobs. I can't see anything. Tell my mom I love her. Don't say goodbyes. Mara thundered. Breathe. Listen to me. I'm your voice. Look at my lights when you see me, nothing else. Mateo, I need you behind clearing the lane. Don't let anyone try to pass. Copy, I answered. I grabbed the CB and started shouting orders. Attention, runaway truck. Kilometer 137. Clear the road now. Everyone pull over. Other truckers' voices answered instantly. Copy. We're out of the lane. We're with you. The chain activated. Like dominoes, truckers closed access points, killed engines, unloaded passengers. It was already a ritual. When one falls, all line up. The boys' trailer entered Skull Curve lurching. The rebar slammed against the box walls as if trying to burst free. Now, Mateo! Mara shouted. She moved her patrol car ahead, blue lights cutting through the smoke. She placed herself right in front of the monster. Again. Like that time with me, like at the dagger, like at the coyote. One woman alone against the mountain. I won't let you go, she cried. Follow my light. You're stronger than fear. I came behind, closing the path, watching hell open with every inch. I felt the vibration in the wheel, the stench of burning metal, the roar of wind trying to tear us away. The ramp appeared, a blue sign, trembling, as always. 300 meters. The young man screamed on the radio, "I won't make it, I won't make it." Mara answered, "You've already made it, brother, just follow my light." And then it happened. The trailer entered the ramp. The rebar shrieked, the tires exploded like thunder, the sand erupted in a golden blast. The beast buried itself with a violence that made the mountain tremble. But it stopped. It stopped. The silence that followed was unbearable. Only smoke and ragged breaths. The CB spat out a sigh, a sob that turned into laughter. "I'm alive! I'm alive!" Nico jumped out of the cab, ran toward the ramp, and raised his arms high. Everyone followed. Truckers one by one, men and women battered by life, raised their arms and began blasting their horns in unison. The whole valley thundered with that mechanical roar that wasn't noise. It was prayer. Mara stepped out of her patrol car. She looked at me with eyes full of restrained tears. We walked toward her. I hugged her tightly, without words. Nico joined the embrace. We were 3 generations bound in a single moment. The past that saved me, the present that held us, and the future already learning to step to the front. That night, at the nearest rest stop, nobody talked about loads or delivery times. Everyone talked about the chain. About how life doesn't depend on a single wheel, but on many hands that refuse to let go. Someone hung an improvised sign on the wall, "Road chain, never alone on the route." And since then, every time a trucker runs into trouble, those words run through the CB like a sacred code. I keep driving. Mara keeps patrolling. Nico keeps recording stories. And every time I go down the spine of the winds, I go down slowly, with lights on, honking twice. Once for me, once for everyone who stood at the front so that today I can tell it. Because now I know not all heroes fly. Some wear uniforms, others hold a steering wheel, and others just a little wooden charm around their neck. But all are part of the same chain. And as long as that chain exists, the devil of the road never wins. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and share it with someone you love. Here we keep telling real stories of delivery drivers who defy death and become legend. And if you want to support this project, you can invite me to a symbolic coffee at the link below. Each coffee is like a hug in the middle of the road. Thank you for making it this far. See you at the next curve.